What's happening, people? It's Ryan Taylor again, and I thought I'd do one more video before the January transfer window shuts tomorrow night. I've been working sort of hell for leather throughout this month. Really looking forward to getting back my spare time and some of my days off as well outside of my working week. Just because at the moment it's been really dedicated to finding some of these stories and getting more information and chasing people, chasing contacts. But, you know, I obviously clearly enjoy it. It's something I've really enjoyed over the past 3 to 4 weeks. But it all ends tomorrow. Kind of cautious of the fact some of this information might be outdated by the time the video is up and uploaded and being watched tomorrow. But yeah, really appreciative of the support so far. So I'm just going to run through some of the different stories and different prospects that could happen on deadline day, starting with Arsenal. Now, Arsenal obviously seem to be selling players at galore, really weakening their squad. A lot of fringe players have gone out the door, the likes of Pablo Mari. Saw Callum Chambers go to Aston Villa in midweek. There's been quite a few others as well. Kolasinac joining Marseille. I think there is one more I've missed as well. But the situation, as I understand it, is that Arsenal will be busy tomorrow. Not sure what they've got lined up, but they will try for a striker. Not sure who that will be. Obviously, there's been links to Alexander Isak, who's obviously been in London this week with Adnan Januzaj partying in Soho. The Arsenal fans dug up, obviously, that there's potentially a car that's been registered in London. But to be honest, at the moment, there is nothing to that. I believe we will see movement though. Not sure what that will be or how successful Arsenal will be, but they will certainly try tomorrow to bring in players because there's an understanding that one, they need a centre forward, and also at the back they're slightly light, having got rid of the likes of Chambers and Kolasinac and Mari. The other one was Maitland-Niles, just remembered, that's went to Roma. Anyway, talk Eddie Nketiah is close to signing to Newcastle. He's wide of the mark. He's a player of interest to him and the player they'll potentially try and sign before the deadline. But to say that, you know, anything's close it was shot down when I sort of asked the question if there was legitimacy to talk a deal was close. But Nketiah's future, Mikel Arteta wants to keep him until the summer. He's been quite clear on that. See, Arsenal rejected another bid from Palace for the striker, who is obviously free to negotiate with clubs from Europe over a pre-contract agreement. See, Gladbach are one of the teams that are interested by Leverkusen as well, although they have just now signed Sardar Azmoun from Zenit. But the real key one here is Aubameyang, and he is understood to be close to joining Barcelona. However, there is talk in Spain that Ousmane Dembele's future could be central to Aubameyang's future and whether they get him through the door. But we're just kind of waiting to see now what materialises. But Arsenal are open to offloading Aubameyang, obviously, seeing as he's out of favour now with Mikel Arteta, following the breach of disciplinary in December, where he was stripped of the captaincy. Suddenly I can't talk. So Nketiah, I expect him to stay till the summer unless a real sort of substantial offer arrives from Newcastle. We're going to come on to them later in the video. But that is how I currently see the situation. And I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal pulled a rabbit out of the hat tomorrow. Not sure what that might be. But Edu is obviously open and exploring targets. If they don't sign a striker, obviously they're expected to go for a big marquee name in the summer. Jonathan David, Isak, Dominic Calvert-Lewin are all names of interest. Ollie Watkins is one that's been looked at loosely as well. So we'll see what happens on that front. But I do expect Arsenal to be one of the busier clubs tomorrow, to be honest with you. There's kind of an anticipation that something might happen or something might get pulled out of the bag. And I wanted to talk about Spurs as well, who are also going to be incredibly busy. Obviously, Fabio Paratici has left it really late to do these deals. That really can't talk tonight. That Antonio Conte has obviously been hell-bent on, given that the glaring flaws within his squad that has been really evident in recent weeks. At current time of recording, there's a lot of stuff going on. Tanguy Ndombele is going to go back to Lyon on loan, I believe. There was talks with Valencia or another club that sort of had an agreement in place, but Ndombele didn't want to go to Spain, but obviously Paris Saint-Germain were the main ones. Really quite close to signing Ndombele, but they failed to get rid of a midfielder that would have been able to just open up that space and that leverage to get a deal done. Giovanni Lo Celso as well. Villarreal strongly interested. If he's going to leave, Villarreal will probably be the destination. He had the chance to join Lyon, who agreed terms with Tottenham over a deal. But Lo Celso didn't fancy going back to France, where obviously he's played with PSG before. I know one sort of clear talking point that's been sort of brought up amongst quarters of Tottenham's fan base is, if Ndombele is being sent back to Lyon, why did they not go for Bruno Guimaraes, who's obviously signed for Newcastle now? You know, he really ticks a box that Tottenham are looking for in terms of an assertive midfielder that can sort of do it all. Although he's sort of more of a holding midfield role, Guimaraes, you know, it's an area that Tottenham could certainly do with strengthening. Elsewhere, Bryan Gil was going to go back to Spain with Valencia, which I just find completely strange. Tottenham obviously know he can do it in Spain with, you know, he's flourished on loan at Leganés and Eibar. So he belonged to Sevilla before they got the swap deal done with Eric Lamela, the player plus cash one last summer. So sending Gil back to Valencia, I'm not sure it's what he needs right now. You know, maybe a loan move in the Premier League would have been slightly more beneficial to him. Obviously his minutes have been limited, but you know, Spurs have made the breakthrough in terms of signing Dejan Kulusevski from Tottenham. That'll be a loan to buy. And Rodrigo Bentancur will come as well. He's currently away in South America with Uruguay, but a deal will get done. Obviously, Villa were strongly interested, had a bid rejected by Juventus sort of a matter of days ago. And he will certainly strengthen them. Obviously, Sofian Amrabat was a player that was the subject of strong talks, but now Spurs have sort of turned their back on that one. It wasn't one that was greatly received by Tottenham supporters either, so I think they'll be happy about that. But once again, wouldn't be surprised if Spurs pulled another rabbit out of the hat tomorrow. I think the fact Ndombele and Lo Celso are going, and the fact Bergwijn is still the subject of talks from Ajax is a clear indication that more players could arrive. I know Bergwijn are sort of, if he goes to Ajax, I'm sort of expecting a bit of stick because I said he was pretty much an unsellable asset this month after his brace at Leicester. And what I meant by that was Antonio Conte has been so clear that he does not want to get rid of Bergwijn. So the only kind of way I see that happening is if, obviously, Kulusevski's on his way, so that is sort of a one-in, one-out situation. But Conte sees Bergwijn as a player who's really tactically flexible. There's a chance he was going to try right wing back, and injuries have really stopped him sort of performing to his maximum under Conte. And he's a player that he feels he can develop and really sort of improve. So his communication to Paratici, from what I've read and understand, is that he wants Bergwijn to stay. But obviously Paratici is the businessman who, you know, if they can recoup sort of 20 mil for Bergwijn, that will be sort of respectable business, although it's a 7 mil hit. But we'll see what happens. Like I said, I'm expecting potentially something to come out the blue tomorrow for Tottenham. And Paratici is in Italy working on stuff. Obviously, he's got good connections in Serie A, and that is predominantly where Tottenham seem to be shopping. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's another unexpected name that is more of a sort of an an opportunistic deal. So something sort of being presented by agents or by a sporting director to Spurs that, if it's of interest to them, they'll go and do it. Just moving on now to West Ham. Now, big story here. Ćaleta-Car, the Marseille centre-back, has been the subject of talks for around about 18 months now. He was pretty much offered to West Ham in the summer of 2020. However, he wanted to stay at Marseille and play Champions League football. Now, it's another one that I'm sort of expecting stick for if it doesn't happen. But from what I understand, Ćaleta-Car to West Ham is close as of tonight. They made an initial loan with option to buy offer early in the week that was rejected by Marseille because they want a permanent deal. £15 million was the price tag. From what I understand now, it looks like a potentially permanent deal would be on the cards. West Ham want to strengthen at centre-back. It's the main area that they want to improve in the market, because obviously they've lost Angelo Ogbonna for the rest of the season due to a knee injury sustained against Liverpool. And Ćaleta-Car is one with Nikola Milinkovic that has been sort of really strongly identified in the past sort of 18 months, as I mentioned, to 2 years. It's a player that's been linked in pretty much every transfer window. And interestingly, last January, when Liverpool were in the hunt for a centre-back after losing Joel Matip, Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk to injury, Ćaleta-Car was close to joining Liverpool. There was actually a point where he was sort of told to prepare to fly to Merseyside and sort of ready some travel, clothing, etc. because a deal with Liverpool looked close before the Reds signed Ozan Kabak from Schalke. He's obviously on loan at Norwich now. I'd really love to go into detail as to how I've acquired the information on Ćaleta-Car, because it's a really interesting story, and it's a concrete source sort of high up at Marseille. But from what I understand, obviously negotiations are ongoing over a deal. But it kind of ties into the second point I want to make. There's been talks between West Ham and the agent of Bamba Dieng over a potential deal. He's the kind of profile they're looking at as a secondary striker to sort of support Mikel Antonio. As I've touched upon in previous videos, West Ham are still fighting on three fronts. They've got the Europa League, which is obviously going to be a huge priority once the knockout stages return. They still want to finish as high as they can in the Premier League. And obviously the FA Cup, they beat Leeds. It's a really good chance to potentially, reach a final. And yeah, Dieng remains a player of interest, but spoke to his agent earlier, and he told me that they just received an offer to go Turkey, but that's the only concrete bid on the table, but they've rejected it. Dieng set to play for Senegal tonight at the Africa Cup of Nations. I think any deal here looks unlikely, to be honest with you, in the last 24 hours, but Ćaleta-Car is a player that there is certainly movement on, and personally I expect him to be a West Ham player. Marseille want to sell, West Ham want to buy, so there's everything effectively there needed to be done. All that needs to be resolved is the fee, the structure of the deal, the payment plan, etc. It's a pretty straightforward deal to do if West Ham have the money. It just depends if they want to try and be clever about it and how sort of desperate they are for a centre-back. From reading between the lines, from what we understand, they do want a centre-back because they need, that cover and that extra squad depth to compete on all fronts. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ćaleta-Car signs tomorrow on deadline day, but we'll see what happens. At the moment, there's still stuff to resolve on that front. It's not a done deal by any stretch, but it's certainly moving in the right direction and negotiations are at an advanced stage. Just tying into a bit of West Ham now, Raphinha and Calvin Phillips, honestly, where's this come from? So when I saw the Raphinha reports from 90minute.com, with all due respect to 90minute.com, it's not exactly the most sort of reputable outlet, very hit and miss in terms of transfer stories, but the Raphinha interest is genuine from West Ham. But as far as I understand, it didn't go as far as a bid. It was more West Ham communicating to Leeds that they were interested in Raphinha and Calvin Phillips, and Leeds were quite firm in the sense that they said, not for sale in January, and we're not losing these players. Furthermore, effectively both of them would cost silly money. So Leeds not interested in weakening their squad to that extent, especially sort of two of their best players. But huge ambition from West Ham. It just shows, with the right signings, and if there is actually this kind of money to spend, that they could be knocking on the door of the top 6 and top 4, like they are already. So we'll see what happens on that front. In terms of other Leeds deals, Takumi Minamino is obviously, a player that they're looking at. Minamino's away currently with Japan. I think they play Saudi Arabia after the deadline, I think on Tuesday in a World Cup qualifier. And the issue any club looking to do business with Liverpool for Minamino have is that because of COVID, foreign nationals cannot enter Japan at the moment to undergo a medical, and obviously, given the time at the moment, to get a delegate out to Japan to conduct a medical would be a problem anyway, given we're literally sort of coming up to 24 hours until the deadline. But since the signing of Luis Diaz, Liverpool have altered their stance on Divock Origi and Minamino. Obviously, the arrival of Diaz will sort of decrease their playing time, even though Diaz is probably going to be rivaling sort of Sadio Mane more than anything for his position in Liverpool's team. But Leeds asked the question and asked whether Minamino would be available this month before the Diaz deal, and Liverpool said no. They wanted to keep all of their attackers this month, particularly with Salah and Mane at the Africa Cup of Nations. So yeah, that's what's happened there. But obviously that could now change. We've seen a few others. Kennedy from Chelsea is one they've looked at. Obviously recalled from Flamengo by Thomas Tuchel. I expected him to sort of help out and play sort of a backup role to Marcus Alonso at left wing back, because Ben Chilwell was out for the season. But it's one could potentially see movement on. The other one is Calvin Ramsey at Aberdeen. Now, Leeds have made an offer. It's not sort of one of serious, sort of immediate, let's get him through the door. But, sort of long-term for the club's long-term vision, Ramsey's really sort of an attractive option. He's been really impressive with Aberdeen. His defensive stats are sort of unbelievable, really, for a young prospect. Bologna have also made a bid, I think 4.8 million, but it's sort of a loan with an option to buy at a total package of just under 5 mil. I think Leeds have come in just a bit lower than that, about 3 million. So one to keep an eye on. Wouldn't be surprised if it happened. Just other little bits of Leeds news now is Crescencio Somerville, the youngster, is the subject of interest from Hamburg. There's a chance he could leave Ellen Road on deadline day, a bit like Helder Costa did last year when he joined Valencia. But Leeds are sort of, it's been played down, how much they've looked at the market, but they have, because see, Brendan Aronson was the main target. Salzburg, were legitimate in the fact that they are not prepared to sell him this month due to the Champions League. But they've looked at other little signings that could help him out until the end of the season, particularly loan deals. But they will return for Aronson in the summer. He's a player that's like a long-term target. See, I've mentioned before, but he's in the top 1% for distance covered in world football, which is absurd. He's averaging 13k a game in the Champions League, and he's run more than any other player in the competition this season. But obviously Salzburg want to keep. So yeah, that's the Leeds latest. I know obviously a backup goalkeeper is also one they could do business for as well. Elsewhere, Newcastle. Now, Matt Targett is of interest, and wouldn't be surprised if a bid landed at Aston Villa's table tomorrow or this evening. Obviously, Lucas Digne's arrived now at Villa Park, which completely changes his prospects of playing. So we'll see what happens on that front. I know a left-back and striker are of interest to Newcastle. See, they've agreed a deal in the region of £13 million for Dan Burn today, who's heading north. Back home to the northeast, he grew up in Blythe. He represented Newcastle in his youth, and he also supported the club as a boy. So this one he's really happy about, although he would have been fine with staying at Brighton as well. I did make it clear as well on my Twitter that after the second bid was rejected yesterday, the feeling that I had from those involved in negotiations was that a third bid was going to be enough. See, that has proved to be the case, but Newcastle have just wasted too much money on Diego Carlos, time. It was a saga that really dragged on. With Botman, they walked away after 2 bids. But with Carlos, it sort of dragged on when they were never really offering serious money. He has quite a big release clause, but Newcastle was sort of offering 25 to 30 million, which is just nowhere near enough what was required to land the player. You see, Sevilla pulled the plug on that, and Newcastle walked away, as I exclusively reported last week. But don't be surprised if they go for some new targets or some new opportunities. Obviously, they got Bruno Guimaraes through the door today. Dan Burn's going to be the 4th name. And that's a fairly, good window with Trippier and Wood as well. Not sure about Wood myself. I don't see that working out long term. But once again, Newcastle could be busy. And sorry, just one I wanted to mention, Jesse Lingard. Do not rule out a late move for Lingard materialising. Reason being, he's obviously out of contract in 6 months' time. He may not play at Man United. Obviously, Van der Beek going, and Greenwood's situation may now sort of see him get a bit more minutes, but you know, Lingard's out of contract in 6 months, and at the moment he's not going to sign a new deal. So if Newcastle pay a reasonable figure, not the 12 million that was being quoted to him by United, but a deal could probably be easily arranged. Lingard doesn't want to join Newcastle on a permanent deal. He'd prefer to return to West Ham. There's also interest from Europe. But Dele Alli's another one, a player that's been offered around. If Newcastle fancy it, the deal's there to be done. So we'll see what happens with Ali. I think Everton's another one that I wouldn't rule out for Dele Alli. Let's see what happens with that. Obviously, Donny van der Beek is now going to Goodison Park. A deal that should have happened last summer, but Solskjaer put the brakes on that. But now Everton have got their manager sorted. Lampard will want a few more faces through the door before tomorrow if he can. So Everton will be trying as well. Just moving on to Burnley before we go on to a Q&A. Burnley, man, honestly, I've been chasing some of the stories pretty much all week. My kind of philosophy and sort of outlook to how I cover transfers is that obviously you've got your big hitters like your Mr. Fabrizio Romano, your David Ornsteins, etc. John Percy at the Telegraph breaking these sort of big deals. Not big deals, but, you know, the bigger transfers. And at the moment, they're out of my reach. I still try. Some of them I get joy on, like Trippier, a few others. But at the moment, you know, I'm just not at that level where I can sort of pull these regular big hitting, huge stories out of the bag. So I'm kind of targeting these sort of stories like Weghorst and Orsic. I've had some really good conversations and insight and information into those deals. I know quite a few Burnley fans have followed me on Twitter, so I appreciate that. This is my understanding of the situation. Wout Weghorst, which, by the way, what a buy at £12 million, considering Chris Wood went for 25. I think Weghorst got 20 last season in the Bundesliga. I've had really good relationship with his agent over the past 18 months. Tottenham actually had a look at signing him in 2020 as backup to Kane before they got Carlos Vinicius. A move didn't quite happen. Before the pandemic as well, he came close to joining the Premier League club, but the deal collapsed because of the complicated financial climate that sort of materialised and sort of came about, you know, once these clubs lost all the financial revenue from match day, from, you know, matches with crowds, etc., and we went behind closed doors. The clubs just didn't have the money to spend in the market. But Weghorst now looks set to join Burnley. £12 million, as I mentioned. A really good deal. He's, you know, if you're looking at for a player sort of made for Burnley, it's Wout Weghorst. Absolute brute, strong as an ox, can play with his back to goal, holds it up, great finisher, great in the air. Really looking forward to seeing McNeil, Maxwell Cornet, who's been an excellent signing, and Weghorst in action. Obviously, I've touched on Ramsey as well. That's one to keep an eye on. You know, the guy at Lorient as well remains of interest to Burnley. Apologies, it's very sort of poor for me that I've not remembered his name, but Armand Loriente, that's the one. He's a player they've looked at significantly, and obviously the Mislav Oršić deal was off now. Wanted to touch on that because obviously, you know, I did say that a deal was understood to be a matter of time, and I stand by that. A fee was agreed with Dinamo Zagreb. What wasn't agreed was the structure of the payment. So when Burnley, how much they pay up front, how much was paid sort of instalments, etc. And then what happened was, during that sort of haggling period, Orsic in his home country in Zagreb was receiving sort of really strong sort of hate almost from the Dinamo Zagreb fans for sort of potentially walking out on Dinamo when they're fighting for the title. Just want to see how they got on today, actually, because obviously Orsic played and Dinamo came out and said that he wouldn't be leaving. Alan Pace flew to Zagreb on Friday to try and close a deal, but he was then told that, wow, he scored 1-2-0 against Rijeka and Orsic scored. So, you know, that's kind of it's paid off for them. But he won't be leaving the club. But he was offered the chance, to double his salary at Turf Moor. Not really a big earner in the Croatian league at the moment. I think he would have been earning sort of between 24,000 and 30,000 a week at Burnley. I think sort of more towards 24,000. Would have been a good move for him. As I've mentioned before, he came close to joining West Brom under Slaven Bilic. But generally speaking, Burnley considered this to be a done deal, more or less. Dinamo then informed them that they wanted Orsic to play against Rijeka today, and then maybe a deadline day deal could happen. But it just didn't come off for him. And there's messages of frustration coming out of Burnley at the moment, because like I said, Dinamo basically went back on their word because a fee was agreed between the clubs. I had mixed sort of messages on what that fee was. Burnley said 7 million. Dinamo Zagreb sources said 8.4 million, which was 10 million euros. But Burnley will try for a dynamic forward like Orsic in the final day of the window, and they'll also go for a centre mid as well. Obviously, there's been interest in Seko Fofana, etc. That deal doesn't look likely to happen. But keep an eye on Burnley because they're trying. And to their credit, you know, they've showed great ambition in the market. Really sort of pushed the pace and, excuse the pun, with Alan Pace. But they've really sort of shown a good attitude towards targeting deals from the European market. They've not been ripped off by sort of Championship clubs and other Premier League clubs over players. And yeah, let's see what happens. But obviously, it's likely, whatever happens, is likely to have a huge say on the relegation dogfight, and particularly even though Burnley's game's in hand, it could play into their favour if they're able to get deals down the line. My phone keeps going off. I'm getting messages. Right, Q&A time. I put a tweet out just seeing if there was actually people that wanted me to answer questions. I've got quite a few, so I'll work through these and what I know. Ćaleta-Car, permanent or loan, says Callum. I don't have clarification right now on the formula of the deal that's being discussed between West Ham and Marseille. However, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Marseille want a permanent option. There's a chance they want a permanent deal. They want £15 million. There is a chance West Ham can negotiate a loan with a clear obligation to buy or permanent option in the summer that will be activated, not one that's sort of unlikely to happen. At the moment, Callum, I can't tell you for certain, but I do expect it to be done. It's the transfer window, so there's no guarantees it will happen and things can change. But from the information I'm receiving, and like I said, can't go into details, but where the information's come from, Marseille, it looks like it's going to happen. So I'd expect it to be a permanent deal, even if it was an initial loan, sort of one that became permanent in the summer. West Ham don't want just loan deals. Doesn't appeal to them. They want to bring in signings that follow what they've done in the last few transfer windows with the likes of Kufal, Souček, Benrahma. These strong signings, Bowen, that have really improved the team and driven them up the table. Striker news, West Ham. Ekitike. Talks ongoing with Stade Rem over Ekitike. Issue have, Rem are trying to really get as much money they can, whereas any clubs negotiating with them are trying to structure clever deals involving add-ons, such as like if they make 100 appearances, they then get an extra payoff, or if West Ham qualify for the Champions League, they'd get an extra payoff. Newcastle, obviously, daftly included, if we win the Champions League, we'll pay you this much. But obviously, Rem were not falling for that. They didn't want to, effectively it's money that wouldn't get paid to them. So the deal might cost 30 million, but, 15 million of that can be in add-ons. And if 5 million is winning the Champions League, there's an understanding that Rem are getting the wool pulled over their eyes. Ekitike remains of interest. Nothing concrete at the moment, unfortunately, though, on that front. And obviously, Bamba Dieng is another one they've looked at. So let's have a look. Can Southampton expect any incomings? Southampton are always open to opportunities in the market. However, it's been pretty clear this month that their business has been sort of low profile and they'll wait until the summer. I know Andrin at Chelsea is a player they've looked at, but he's now going to Huddersfield on loan. To be honest, I'd be very surprised. Unfortunately, I know it's not the news you want to hear, but be very surprised if Southampton done anything tomorrow. But we'll see. Are Newcastle trying for another marquee signing for Bruno, says Paul. Ousmane Dembele, keep an eye on him. The reason being, Barca want to sell this month. They want to get him gone before tomorrow's deadline because he's yet to sign a new contract. His agents have been really sort of just negotiations have just been absolutely no progress between the two parties, and it looks like Dembele's going to leave now. If he's not part of the project, Barca want rid. And obviously there's only a select few clubs that are going to go for Dembele or have the money to do a deal, and those are from the Premier League really. And Newcastle have made an offer to Dembele for the summer when he becomes a free agent. So they're potentially looking at signing him on a pre-contract agreement. However, if Barca were to sort of present them with the opportunity to sign Dembele tomorrow, if Newcastle get all of their big signings through the door, or not big signings, all of the box ticking ones for Eddie Howe they want, so a centre-back, which has been done, right back obviously, Trippier, have signed Wood, centre midfielder as well, Bruno Guimaraes. If they can get a left-back, don't see why they might not make a late move for Dembele. Let's see what happens on that front. Anything Leeds, please, Ryan, says Johnny. Obviously, Johnny, I have covered Leeds further in the video. Obviously, you can run across the bottom here and go to Leeds for the update. O'Brien's an interesting one. I got asked about him a couple of hours ago. I don't have anything on O'Brien. That's not to say O'Brien is not... something might happen. Personally, I don't have anything on that story, so I don't know. I can't tell you. Kennedy's one they've looked at, so is Minamino, and I think Leeds will try to do something tomorrow. Don't know what that is. Martin Hesketh says, other than Weghorst and a centre midfielder, do you think Burnley will look for a wide man? Yes, they will. Similarly to what I just said to Johnny, I've covered it in this video, but they will go for a wide player. They want more options, and the idea with the Wood money was to invest in two players, whether that be another striker and a centre midfielder. But, you know, they're going to look for a winger as well. Obviously, they do have McNeil and Cornet, who will be first choice, but we'll see what happens. Aubameyang and Nketiah leave, and surely Arsenal must be signing a replacement, says AFC. Obviously, I don't know what his real name is. Aubameyang and Nketiah are not going to leave in tomorrow unless something incredible comes off, like an Isak or a Jonathan David, which even still, I'm not quite sure that would be enough to justify doing that. Sorry, I'm a bit bunged up as well. I've got a blocked nose. Nketiah, I expect him to stay. Aubameyang's the likely one to go. Arsenal must be signing a replacement. Look, I don't know at the moment what's going to happen with Arsenal. They might have something lined up. The money is there to spend because obviously they made it clear to Fiorentina they're willing to pay 58 million for Dusan Vlahovic. But obviously the player chose to not to join Arsenal and to go to Juventus, which is now complete. Arsenal will look for opportunities tomorrow. At the moment, nothing's close, nothing sort of firm talks, but let's see what happens. Scott says, any late activity from Leeds? Kind of touched upon this, Scott, but yes, I do think Leeds are looking for opportunities tomorrow. Let's see what happens. Obviously, ideally, sort of an attacking midfielder is of interest. Raphinha and Phillips won't be sold, so you've got nothing to worry about there. We'll see what happens. George says, Palace likely to sign anyone else this window? If not, would it be... who would we like in the summer of 2022? Palace will be open to something tomorrow. Obviously, they wanted Van der Beek. There was talk it was agreed between United. That was never the case. They were hopeful of doing it, but nothing was sort of ever concrete on that front. And there was a lot of clubs interested in Van der Beek. So they didn't really have their hopes up on that front. Obviously, he's linked to Bergkamp, and you know, Vieira's close with Bergkamp, and Bergkamp's daughter is with Van der Beek. So there was kind of optimism that might sort of give him an edge over other clubs, but obviously he's gone to Everton. But they're looking. Mateta could arrive on a permanent deal. The feeling is Vieira's really sort of impressed with the January he's had, Mateta. So I reported earlier this month that there had been a U-turn because there was talk his loan from Mainz could be terminated early and he could join Saint Etienne. Vieira loves Mateta. He knows he's not going to be like a world beater, his best forward, but he, as a squad player, he's good. So that could happen, maybe a permanent trigger of that. But a midfielder's one they're open to as well. Nothing concrete at the moment, but there's opportunistic deals that can materialise in the final days of the window. What happens is agents and selling clubs just offer players around. They say, you know, look, would you be interested in signing any of these? And that's why so many deals happen on deadline day. It's sort of the way it works, the way the market works. Although, you know, the clubs have had all month to do a deal, it's not until the late days of the window that things really start to ramp up. Kind of ties into this next question. Luke says, what club do you expect to be most busy on deadline day, not including deals already agreed? Tottenham. Paratici is just like, he's crazy. He's a crazy guy, man. He is talking with so many clubs and agents right now about potential swap deals, potential loan to buys. Spurs are going to try and scramble as many as they can over the line. Don't know what will happen. But I wouldn't be surprised if another couple players from Serie A arrive. Obviously, there is a lot on outgoings and Ndombele Lo Celso. Any credible rumours of Everton signing a defensive mid, says Rob Wilkinson. Rob, to be honest with you, mate, I don't know. Everton's transfer plans, as I discussed in last week's video, have been up in the air because of the new manager search. And obviously, you know, effectively Everton want to sign players that fit the new manager's system, style of play. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went for someone. I know Matheus Nunes is a player that was continuously linked in the Portuguese press last summer. Let's see what happens. Burnley midfielder winger news. Lewis, I've covered this in the video. Adam, you expecting much business at Everton? Anyone expected to leave, says Adam. Yes, I am expecting Everton to be busy tomorrow. And other than Van der Beek, wouldn't be surprised if they got another one in. Someone like Dele Alli. In terms of outgoings, off the top of my head, can't think of anyone that's close at the moment. Obviously, Ellis Sims has joined Hearts on loan. Let's see what happens. Don't know of anything close at the moment. Desperate Dan says, any truth on movement in Lingard, Ramsey to Burnley? Lingard to Burnley, not heard anything, so don't know where that's come from. Ramsey to Burnley, yes, there's interest. They want to sign him. However, Aaron Ramsey signed for Juventus on a pre-contract agreement from Arsenal, which means he's earning mega money. I think he earns, don't quote me on this, he might earn like 400 grand a week. Obviously, Burnley are never going to be paying anywhere near that, so he'd have to take a massive pay cut, which is obviously something that he doesn't want to do, given the money he's earning. But Allegri's made it clear he wants Ramsey gone. So, yeah. Are Burnley interested in Sveritic? As far as I'm aware, no. Not heard anything on that. See, Weghorst is the main target. Could happen. Don't know anything at the moment. And finally, Tom Hawkins. Is Carlos and Botman 100% dead for Newcastle? No chance of one final push. Hate to rain on your parade, Tom, but yes, it's dead. Sevilla not negotiating anymore. Botman died weeks ago, mate, to be honest. There was 2 bids that went in. It could be revived in the summer, Botman, because he was the Steve Nixon's top defensive target. That's who they wanted, and he fits the long-term strategy, and Lille will be open to a sale in the summer. So don't be surprised if you return for him, provided you stay up. But Carlos, no chance. 40 minutes of me rambling, talking absolute... Right, thank you very much. Like I said, last video of the window, thank you so much for all the comments. Get people I know sharing this on Facebook and like family members commenting, but, you know, just generally the football people that I do it for, the fans, the reason I get these stories. I just want to say big shout out and thank you for all the kind of support and traction I've received throughout the January transfer window. You know, without blowing my own trumpet, I've worked really hard on doing what I can to provide the best coverage I can on some of these stories. So to receive kind of a bit of a following and a bit of interest is just generally, you know, rewarding for me. But I'm going to be going hell for leather tomorrow on some of these stories. Let's see what happens. Keep posted on Express Sport. We're going to be running a deadline day blog tomorrow. We've obviously got our newsletter, which we can ping to your inbox. Follow my Twitter at Ryan Taylor Sport for all the latest deadline day news. And we are going to be covering, I think I'm going to do like 7-8 hours tomorrow, let alone what I'm going to be working on outside of working hours. So if you want to keep posted, hit the follow button. And once again, thank you for all the support. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you all in the summer.